We've all heard the term witching hour. It sounds really sinister, but it's a very normal and regularly occurring incident in your baby's development. But what does it really mean in real terms for you and your baby when you're having to deal with it? Well, the witching hour is quite simply a period of time, usually in the early evening, when your normally happy and contented baby gets grisly, fussy, and it can sometimes develop into full-blown wailing and crying for several hours at a time. This can be really stressful and exhausting, especially after a long day looking after a new baby. And just when you're looking forward to that peaceful evening, then all hell breaks loose and this fussing starts, and then it builds and builds, and then you're left with this crying baby. It can happen in breastfed and in bottle-fed babies, so there doesn't seem to be more preference for one or the other. And it can last anything up to an hour to several hours, and often occurs between the hours of 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. So it's that crucial evening time, and that is why they call it the witching hour. Normally, the witching hour occurs around about 3 weeks of age, and it can go on until they are 6 weeks. Usually fades around 2 to 3 months and should be gone completely by 4 months. If that isn't the case and your baby is older than 4 months and you're still experiencing this regular evening fussiness and your child being very, very upset, then you should seek medical advice, because there might be some underlying condition that needs to be identified. So what causes the witching hour? Why does this mystical thing happen, and what can we do about it? So first of all, let's look at the reasons why it often occurs in very young babies. They could be overtired. This is a very easy thing for small babies to fall into because they haven't yet got a fully established sleep routine, and so if they're not getting enough daytime sleep for whatever reason, and it all builds up, by the end of the day they can easily be overtired, and once they're overtired they become overwhelmed, and when they become overwhelmed they become inconsolable, and so you have this escalating cycle that's really hard to break. Another reason could be hunger. Young babies very often get more hungry during the evenings. As the day builds up, they seem to get naturally more hungry during that evening period. And so if they're not getting enough to eat and they're feeling excessively hungry, or if they are fed and then they're gulping their food and they get uncomfortable, then you're going to end up with a baby that's fussy and crying. Discomfort is another reason. Babies' digestive systems are very immature and they are often prone to a buildup of gas. So if you haven't managed to burp them properly or wind them properly, then they could end up with a buildup of gas towards the end of the day that becomes really uncomfortable, especially when they're tired. So you've got an accumulation of things going on there. They could be experiencing a growth spurt. And during a growth spurt, their sleep is disrupted, their eating habits are disrupted. And so you can see how all these things can intertwine and cause a bigger problem. It might not just be one thing that's causing the issue for the witching hour. It could be a combination of overtiredness, hunger, a growth spurt, and discomfort, which are all building out of the same issue. And it's just, they're little. They're learning to establish to the new world that they find themselves in. And you are helping them get into a routine, and you're learning your way as well. So all of this all can lead into this build up of angst at the end of the day, which ends up with them feeling really uncomfortable and overwhelmed, and then just crying and sometimes being totally inconsolable. And the final thing that can also be a catalyst for all this that's going on, whether it be the overtiredness, the hunger, the growth spurt, a combination of some or others, or just one of those, the discomfort, can be the fact that houses often get very busy at the end of the day, especially if you've got more than one child, or it's when your partner comes home. Things can get a bit hectic. Everyone's trying to get things done by the end of the day. Hectic household can actually just become too much for a young baby, and thrown together with all the other things they're trying to contend with, it can just be the reason why they just go, right, I've had enough. I've just had enough. And they get fussy, cranky, and end up crying. And now we look at the things that you can do to actually help alleviate it. Well, some of you and some babies, depending on the baby, you will just have to ride it out. It can be a very long, tedious period of time in your baby's development. But the good news is that there are things that you can do to set up the best opportunity for your baby not to be too cranky for too long. So first of all, let's look at the overtiredness. I'm always going on about sleep, looking about sleep in a 24-hour period, how you just can't look in one problem in isolation. Ensuring your baby gets enough daytime sleep will ensure that they are not overtired by the end of the day. And I'm always saying an overtired child, no matter how old they are, is more difficult to handle. So really get to know how much baby sleep your baby needs. If you go to our website, we've got all the sleep schedules that tell you exactly how much babies need to sleep at any given age, and that can give you a really good calculator to work with, so you can predict whether your baby's going to be more cranky in the evening or not, whether they need that extra nap, or whether they're just not getting enough sleep and that's the reason for their fussiness. I sometimes find even if you can't fix the situation, if you know the reason why, it's a lot easier to deal with. The next thing is the hunger thing. Often young babies, very young babies, get a lot more hungry in the evenings. So what you can do is you can cluster feed. It's a very common practice, and one that I find has really helped a lot of parents when their babies are fussing during the evening. That means that you're not going to stick to the usual routine. You are going to almost demand feed as the evening goes along. So if you have to feed little and often, and that fixes your baby and that calms them down, then for that short period of time that this so-called witching hour is occurring, then do it. It's your baby's way of telling you what their body needs. It also has the added benefit when you cluster feed that they might sleep for longer at night. So listen to your baby, watch your baby's cues. If you think they're hungry, then feed them little and often during the course of the evening and see if that helps. Now, leading on from the feeding, it does mean that if you're feeding them more often, you've got to ensure that you are winding them and making sure that they're not in any discomfort. If you notice that your baby's drawing their legs up, their fists are clenched, that usually means that they're in some sort of discomfort. So finding out some good ways of winding your baby and burping them to make sure that they haven't got any trapped gas is really going to help. And there are lots of different positions you can put your baby in to help them feel more comfortable. Some babies need to be over the shoulders, some babies like to be sitting on your lap. And I was taught a really clever trick when I was working at Queen Charlotte's Maternity Hospital in London when I was doing my training. And there was a matron there who had had many, many years of looking after newborns and little babies. And she showed me this trick that you sit the baby on your lap with your hand under their chin, one hand, and the other, so they're sitting sideways to you, hand under the chin, and you've got the other hand on the back, and you hold them with their head supported, and you don't pat, you don't rub, you rock them gently backwards and forwards to left and right in front of you. And it was amazing how the babies found this calming. And that moves me on to movement. Very often, if your baby is suffering the witching hour, movement can really help. And there are several ways that you can help with this. If it's restrictive, try baby wearing. That really, really helps because it gives your arms free. You can carry on doing what you wanted to do, but you're wearing your baby, and they can often find a lot of comfort in that. And if that works, then do it. Remember, this is a passing phase. I'm not worrying about establishing bad habits at this point. What I'm concerned with is that you have a peaceful end to your day and your baby is not getting themselves worked up into a frenzy. So if baby wearing works, then do it. Often putting them in a stroller, as long as they're lying flat, and moving them or rocking them in a crib. Movement takes their mind off whatever it is that's causing them to be uncomfortable. Another trick you can use is try swaddling your baby. Not necessarily just to put them down to sleep, but just swaddling them or putting them in a stroller and rocking them. Even if they're not going to sleep, they might find the comfort of the swaddle will stop them from fussing. You could try a pacifier. That also often works. And also take a look at your diet if you're breastfeeding. Make a diary. And do you notice that on certain days when you've eaten certain things that your baby is more fussy in the evenings, then it might be something that you're eating that's causing them some digestive discomfort. As always, try and have a peaceful end to your day. Try and wind it down, keep things calm. Give your baby a warm bath. So you start building a bedtime routine in a very simple form. Giving them a baby massage might also help to relax them. All of these things can help get your baby into a calmer state of mind. And finally, I would say share the load. If nothing works, if your baby is going through this phase and every night, as regular as clockwork, you're beginning to dread that period of time in the day when the screaming is going to start, share the load. Take turns. It's really important that you look after yourself during this period because it can be very, very trying. And don't feel guilty because it is so common and it happens in lots and lots and lots of babies. And the good news is they will grow out of it. And then you'll look back on it and think, oh, it was just relatively short period of time. But when you're in the moment, it feels like forever. And it can be very, very, very hard work and distressing, and you feel helpless sometimes because nothing that you do seems to calm your baby down. So you can try a lot of the things that I have suggested and see if they work, but just bear in mind that if they don't, it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It could just be that your baby is going through this witching hour phase. It's also important to stay calm and be kind to yourself. As I said, don't blame yourself. Get your groceries delivered to the door. When your baby's sleeping during the day, when you know the evening is going to be tough, give yourself a bit of downtime so that you don't have a frantic day during these periods. Try to avoid those because you're going to be more tired at the end of the day, and you know you're going to need your energy and your patience at the end of the day. So try and modify it if you can in such a way that you are prepared and ready to deal with what's coming. The witching hour normally is gone by 4 months of age. It can happen every evening and it shouldn't last for more than 3 hours. What you do need to know is the difference between what we call the witching hour and colic. They are not the same thing. And the way to determine what's going on with your little one is to apply the 3-3-3 rule. If your baby is crying for more than 3 hours a night, more than 3 days a week, for more than 3 weeks, then the chances are there's something else going on and you should seek medical advice. Because if your baby is suffering from what is really colic, when it's diagnosed, there will be other things that you can do to help with this extreme discomfort that your baby is experiencing. Again, colic is a common thing in young babies. It's nothing for you to be scared about, but you will need to treat it differently than if it was just the witching hour. For more in-depth information on this subject, take a look at our posts, The Causes of the Witching Hour and Baby Won't Stop Crying. In those posts, you're going to find even more information on how to deal with this really difficult and tricky phase in your baby's development. And don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. I always like to hear from you, and I hope that you found this video helpful. Thank you.